Good. So we're going to listen to these, we're going to listen to these ideas, these viewpoints coming from our Tibetan Buddhist tradition, from our lamas. It's from my side a very simple presentation of these very advanced concepts. I'll do my best to make them sound sensible. I'll do my best. I'm not that knowledgeable about it, so I hope I don't mislead you. But these extraordinarily sophisticated, sort of the most extraordinarily sophisticated level of Buddhist psychology, metaphysics, practice, you know. So then we're going to listen to these teachings to see if we can find some tools from it, to trying to get some comprehension of it psychologically, the way these teachings work, how they can be beneficial to us, how they can help us, which is the point of all of Buddha's teachings from A to Z, how they can help us develop our amazing potential. That's the bottom line, you know. So it's advice, it's all advice. And if you don't have to take the advice, of course, you're the boss, not Buddha, but it is advice. So listen to it as advice. And if there's even 1% of it makes sense, then fantastic. Put that into practice or aspire to do so. So we are a little prayer. The first 2 lines are expressing our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second 2 lines expressing this marvelous, altruistic, long-term motivational goal of Buddhahood, our own perfection, so that we can be a benefit to others. That's the point. That's why we're listening together, these teachings. The refuge prayer is enough. That's it. Sangye charang soke tognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chanyen gi personam ki drola penchi sangye drupa shok Sangye charang soke tognam la jangcho badu dagni kyab suchi dagi chanyen gi personam ki drola penchi sangye drupa shok. So I go for refuge. I rely upon. Until I'm enlightened, I will rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. And so by the virtuous karma I create by listening to these teachings, may I become a Buddha. So I then can really be of benefit to sentient beings. That's the long-term goal. Okay. So we're talking about the Tantrayana, the Vajrayana, the Vajra vehicle. This yana means vehicle. And as we've been talking, you know, this is, if you want to look at this packaging of Buddha's teachings, this lamrim, this Tibetan packaging, the first level of teachings is you know, the teachings and practices suitable to the disciple of the least capability, then the middle capability, and that's the wisdom wing. And if you graduate there, you're a Hinayana practitioner, you'd achieve your own liberation from suffering, you'd achieve your own nirvana, and in one life or other, when you've achieved that, you'll zap off into bliss and you won't come back. You're finished. But if you're on the Mahayana path, you continue on to university level, and you conjoin that with bodhicitta. You get renunciation, that first level, give up suffering and its causes, and then you realize emptiness and really give it up. But on the Mahayana path, you then practice you have this great compassion, this extraordinary level of compassion, not just compassion, may you not suffer, but great compassion, mahakaruna. What can I do to fix it? It's a brave attitude of the bodhisattva. This is a massively important component to add to the wisdom one. You know, and so then you go to, if you're on the Tibetan Buddhist path, you include the Vajrayana. So you've got junior school and high school is the first and second scopes, the wisdom wing. Then you've got university, the great scope, the Mahayana component, and all that's the sutra teachings, the general teachings. And so as John Landau points out in his course notes, you know, in this chapter, in chapter 7, you know, describing the chapter 6 of the sutra path, all the first scopes, the second, second, and third scopes of the lamrim, junior school, high school, university, wisdom wing and compassion wing, that's the causal path. You do one step at a time. You get rid of all the rubbish, you control your body, you control your speech, and you control your mind. Then you add bodhicitta, and slowly you work away, removing the delusions from your mind and growing the goodness until eventually you achieve Buddhahood. But then you enter the most advanced level of practice, the Vajrayana, the Tantrayana, the Mantrayana. So the first one is called the lesser vehicle, then the middle, the high, the great vehicle, and this is the Vajra vehicle. I'm not even sure what the word means. Vajra means indestructible. It's one of the many synonyms for this highest level of teachings. So like I can continually repeat, like any body of knowledge, you would not enter into postgraduate first, would you? It obviously comes before university, which comes after university, which comes after high school, which comes after junior school. It's fairly logical, it's progressive. And when we really start to understand all these teachings, that will make sense to us. Initially, it's quite abstract. Who would ever thought that karma is junior school? We don't know that. But once we understand the logic behind these different stages of practice, it'll make such sense to us, you know. So this is, so also as John's talking about in his course notes, John Landau, you know, the prerequisites for being able to enter into these Tantric practices, even the most simple level, and then to study them and practice them, are what they call the three principal aspects of the path, which is simply another way of presenting what I just described. It's another way of presenting the lamrim. So the first prerequisite is you need, you know, and okay, I'll add a piece here. Given that in Tantra, you are utilizing the most advanced level psychologically, as we've talked, where you're utilizing, this is the actual practitioners, where we're utilizing all the delusions as well as the virtues. It's a very super sophisticated psychological approach. So the only person who can do that is a person who's got renunciation, the first one. What have you renounced? Suffering and its causes. What is suffering and what is causes? Karma and delusions. So you renounced attachment, you renounced the delusions. That's advanced. Then the next level, you've got to have the second of these three principal aspects of the path, the prerequisites, is you need to have somebody teach us. I mean, at least an appreciation for this outrageous, amazing view on the mind, this fierce, extraordinary, unbearable compassion for sentient beings, such that you want to never give up working on Buddhahood so that you can be of benefit. That's the energy that is the driving force. What underpins it is renunciation. You've given up the rubbish. You're no longer in the thrall of this nonsense. Then this profound compassion, unbelievably courageous compassion. Then the third one is you've got to have some wisdom. Ultimately, the wisdom that understands the ultimate nature of things, which is that there's no intrinsic nature. So without a decent amount of, without reasonable renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, you're not qualified to even comprehend, not to mention practice, the more advanced stages, you know. So John in his first chapters discusses that. So then he discusses, in chapter 6, he talks about how, as I just mentioned, all those first stages of practice are known as the causal path. It's a sort of gradual, incremental, one step at a time. And then the Tantric path is considered resultant. So again, it kind of sounds a bit of an abstract idea, but one of the essence of the idea, and we're going to talk about that today, well, two different things we'll talk about today. Last time I think I tried to sort of mention sort of almost like Lama Yeshe says Tantra is highly technical. So what he means by that is when we understand the way a human being is constructed according to the Vajrayana system, which is similar to the Tibetan medical system, this understanding of gross consciousness, subtle consciousness, and very subtle consciousness, and particularly the understanding of the subtle consciousness, the 72,000 subtle channels, our subtle nervous system, through which are coursing these subtle wind energies, which are all connected to our mind. So the great Tantric yogis technically are able to completely manipulate and utilize and work with all that energy. Of course, initially that sounds abstract, but as Lama Yeshe said, it's very technical. So we try to talk about how a little bit the logic of how the great Tantric yogis are able to utilize the subtlest level of mind, able to utilize, and the essence of it is able to generate bliss and combine that with concentration, which is like a rocket boost that gets the mind to the subtlest level, which is the clear light mind. And with that clear light mind, like the subtlest microscope of our mind, we can then become enlightened. And the Tantric techniques enable a yogi to do that. So it's technical. So that we just tried to mention that a little bit. So now the approach, so the psychological approach, one of the approaches they talk about, because you know, you're going to hear the term deity yoga. So and I discussed this, I think last time as well, we talked about what Buddha means and how there are different manifestations of Buddha. There's this version here, which is a manifestation of the sutra teachings, and it's particularly a representation of the lower scope and middle scope. That's control, body, speech, and mind. That's the essence of what Shakyamuni Buddha represents visually. Then you've got in the Mahayana, you have Vajradhara, who's the Tantric aspect of Buddha, kind of in the bodhisattva aspect, which is, and then that's related to Tantra, in this blissful form of a bodhisattva, looking very radiant and beautiful. So it's a form that this is meant to subdue us, and once we've got a handle over our body, speech, and mind, but we can utilize the Tantric approach where we can become sort of generate more joy, generate the ability to be happy. I remember Lama Yeshe when he first presented all this to all the hippies back when he first met us in the 60s and 70s. He'd say, we Westerners have no idea how to be happy. We know how to be miserable. So he said one approach to the whole Tantric psychological approach is to learn to tap into your positive qualities. And that's a very simple way of putting it, a really humble, simple way of putting it. But of course, the only way you can do that is if you've subdued your delusions, you know. But we'll talk a bit about that today and how you apply that in everyday life. I think we did discuss this already, you know, but also discussing the different Buddhas and how we then practice what they call deity yoga. So essentially, that's the resultant approach. They talk about, so when they say, for example, you do the practice of Tara. Like I mentioned, this under Vajrasattva, Vajradhara, you've got the 5 Buddha families. Under those 5 Buddha families, each of which is a manifestation of a particular purified aspect of a particular delusion. And under that, all the other thousands of different Buddhas, all belonging to those 5 different psychological groups, you know. So Tara, for example, belongs to the group under Amitabha. Amitabha is a purification of purified attachment. Chenrezig, Tara, many of the Buddhas that we know are under that family. So Tara, also we can see that she's one, like the 3 essential qualities of Buddha, one way of describing. You've got compassion, which is Chenrezig, wisdom, which is Manjushri, and power, ability, the compassion to want to help, the wisdom to know how, but the power to do so. These are the essential qualities of all Buddhas. But these 3 Buddhas represent each of those qualities. So let's just say you're doing a practice of Tara. One way of describing, this is the resultant approach, is that you know, in the first stages, you're moving, pulling out all the weeds, gradually pulling out all the weeds and popping in the flowers. And slowly, the weeds have all gone. You've got all the flowers, and now you become a Buddha. Here, they talk about these particular practices, your deity yoga from Tantra, where you visualize the end result. You visualize Tara, there's the perfect Buddha outside, and you're thinking of it as a mirror image of your potential. So you're visualizing your end result. It's like the ultimate of positive thinking. Exactly how we think. You imagine winning this, you imagine doing that, you imagine getting this. It's positive psychology, literally the first of the most brilliant positive psychology. You'd never have thought it, but that's what it is. So you're imagining the end result, Tara, then that's your end result. So you're bringing that result into the present by thinking you are now the Buddha. It's very powerful psychology. It's super powerful. So one approach, the lamrim approach, you look at your delusions, you watch your mind like a hawk, and it's necessary to do this. You know, we can't even see our virtue because the delusions are so rampant. So first you control the servants of your delusions, body and speech, in junior school. Then you get into high school where you start to become your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe says. And now you start to identify your delusions. They're the problem. You've got to identify them. You've got to see what the weeds are. They're strangling your flowers. So the main emphasis there is working on your mind like a hawk, having your hands in your own vomit. You're tasting your own vomit. It's not comfortable. Here, the tantric approach, and that's why Lama would teach us from day one these qualities, these practices, because they lift you. Just to do, even if you've done yourself, we even do a 10-minute, a 5-minute practice on Tara. It's so uplifting, you know, and it's so beneficial. Psychologically, we need this. So that's the practices, and all those deity yoga practices are essentially that. Some are really complicated. Some take about 100 pages. Some of the Buddhas are so complicated, like Yamantaka. He's got about 100 arms, 100 legs, holding 100 things. It's really quite complex, and it's a highly sophisticated visual language. So we do them really simply whenever we do, like Chenrezig. On the Saturdays we do Chenrezig. We do the Tara one. Super simple, but it's uplifting. It's uplifting, you know, even to think the thought when you absorb Tara into you at the end, and you think, I am now Tara. This is stupendous, you know, because every thought counts. So it's you, in other words, instead of all the time only seeing the negative. And the reason you see the negative is so the flowers will grow. But we get so caught up in the negative sometimes, we don't even notice our virtues. So this is helping us bring our virtues right to the front. And how you'd live, and this is the point about in daily life. When you've taken one of these highest yoga tantra, there's 4 levels of tantra. John talks about it in his course notes. You know, you have various vows and commitments, and one of the crucial vows, one of the commitments in Tantra, this is really powerful psychology. It's quite extraordinary. You vow, you commit to seeing yourself as the deity. In other words, instead of this hopeless, as Lama Yeshe would call it, the self-pity me, I'm no good, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm miserable. And that's how we think all the time. That's the default kind of assumption of dissatisfaction, which is the energy of attachment. We're never enough. We look in the mirror, we see the wrinkles. We look at see the double chin. We're never this, we're never that. We never have a sense of contentment, of kind of self-respect. So we need to cultivate that. And that's the way from the beginning that Lama Yeshe would try to get us to be, you know, to get past the self-pity. And this is the irony. I mean, the irony of attachment and anger and all, it is self-pity. It sounds cruel, but we're always seeing the negative side. We're always seeing the miserable side of ourselves and therefore, of course, other people, you know. But these practices, when you do them, but the psychology of it, which we can talk about in daily life, is to look. I mean, Lama spoke this about all the time. You read his books, you read his teachings on Tantra, all the time. This is how he's talking. We need to recognize we, you know, have got virtues, have got good qualities. And we have to learn to identify with them. Learn to, not just with the negative, but identify with the positive. And that's exactly what you're doing if you visualize yourself as Tara, Chenrezig, Manjushri, any one of them. You're identifying with that aspect of yourself. So to really learn about that, to really be able to want to do that and be confident in the doing of that and knowing how it can help you in your daily life, first you've got to have an understanding of karma, which is back in junior school, that every thought you have programs you. If you have no confidence in thinking, we just go, oh, what's the point of thinking that way? It's only the mind. We think that in our culture. We think the mind is nothing, but it's literally the opposite in Buddhism. So having confidence in karma, that every thought counts, it produces you. And then really that's crucial. And this is what John talks about in the course notes in chapter 7, I think, and later on, that we've got to understand the teachings in Buddhism about what the mind is and how ultimately, or finally, even ultimately, but even conventional level, that our mind is innately pure. This is really a bizarre idea. If you're a neuroscientist and you hear that your brain is innately pure, you don't know what to do with that, because brain equals mind, doesn't it? So there's no space for that in our psychology, and there is no space. There maybe is in some of the positive psychologists, yes, but not in neuroscience. There's no way. In our hard-edged sciences, there's not a possibility to say that my mind is innately pure when you think your mind is your brain. So this is why we've got to have Buddha's view of what we think what the mind is. This is really crucial. And again, this is Lama Yeshe all the time. He would talk about this in Mahamudra, which is a technique for realizing emptiness of your own mind. He constantly talks about this, and this is what is unique. This is unique to Buddhist psychology. So we need to hear this, because this is the basis of our ability to even begin to focus on and identify with the positive part of us. Otherwise, it's just sort of like crossing your fingers. Oh, how can that help? You know, I'm really a creep. What's the point of thinking I'm not a creep? I mean, this is because we hold these negative views so strongly. We really do believe they're the truth, you know. So it really takes a lot of hard work, but based upon the logic of understanding what mind is, how it's not physical, how fundamentally it is clear and pure. We've got to see, not just hear that as a romantic notion, here it is logical. So let's look at the logic of this, okay? This isn't even actually Tantra. This is just nature of mind, but it's crucial to understand this, because Tantra is based on this. So, okay, we all hear the word, we all hear the term, we've all got Buddha nature. And then we have all these curious ideas about it. There's a little Buddha in there waiting to come out, or we're really Buddha already, we just have to believe it, this kind of thing, you know. It's really a simple concept, but we don't talk like that ourselves. So let's look at it, okay? What does it mean we all possess Buddha nature? Okay, well, the word Buddha, remember, the end result, rid of all the rubbish, full of all the goodness, the perfected mind. Even that implies it, you know. So mind, consciousness, as we know, just repeat the things we know, it is not in its nature physical. It is not a product of, not the handiwork of someone else. It doesn't begin out of nowhere. It's a product of cause and effect. It's beginningless and endless. All of this is logically deduced from the law of cause and effect. Okay, so as Lama talks about in Mahamudra, we've got the mind has everything has a conventional nature and an ultimate nature. Well, the ultimate nature of everything is its emptiness. Is the lack of intrinsic nature of everything, is the ultimate way that everything exists. So then when we talk about we all got Buddha nature, there's two ways of looking at that. But first of all, let's look at the term. If you saw an acorn or any seed, but I like an acorn because you can sort of see it, you know. It's kind of biggish. You would never say this. You know, you say, Mummy, what's an acorn? And she will tell you, she will point to an oak tree and she'll point to the acorn and she will say, well, that is a seed, sweetheart. If you put it in the ground and give it lots of water and warmth and time and sun and plenty of time, it will gradually grow into that. And you'll be very surprised. I mean, if you look at an acorn, there's no evidence. There's nothing. You could be asked for 1,000,000 years to try and guess what an acorn would be if you didn't know botany, and you would see no, and this is an interesting concept now, you'd see no relationship, would you, between an acorn and that magnificent tree. So that, I mean, this is an interesting point I want to make about how we identify ourselves right now. So an acorn, I mean, what it looks like, isn't it? Whatever that shape is. I remember one mathematician in one class told me the name of that shape. I can't remember it. It's a long word. I can't remember what it is. I'll just call it an oval, or it's not really an oval. But let's say what it is, if you look at it, this is again how we tend to think of ourselves as humans. We've got a very limited view, okay, of who we are. So you see an acorn, and it's that little round thing, and it's often got a little hat on it, hasn't it? So it is that physically, literally, it is that. Literally, what we see is that. What we see is that shape. And so a squirrel, it's breakfast for a squirrel. It could be a weapon for someone else. It could be jewelry for someone else. But what it is in its nature? Well, conventionally, what it is a seed that will, when you give it space and time and conditions, will turn into what is called an oak tree. So conventionally, it is a seed that will produce the end result. The end result is an oak tree. So then it's logical to say, is it not? It's just another way of saying it. This is how they talk. All acorns, by definition, possess oak tree nature. We get that once we know what a seed is. We get that. And often you'll hear His Holiness talk, the seed of enlightenment. It's not how we talk. But all acorns, I mean, by definition, not just if you like it. No, by definition, an acorn is a seed that will eventually turn into an oak tree. So therefore, all acorns possess oak tree nature. It's a way of saying it. When we understand what a seed is, we'll hear those words. We get it. And there's no choice. You can't turn it into an apple tree. You can't turn it, you can't, it's nature. It's what defines its existence, is its potential for oak treeness. Well, that's what Buddha's saying about all minds. That's what he's discovered. That every consciousness, and there are trillions, they are beginningless and they are endless. All the hell beings, all the spirits, all the animals, all the humans, all the Hitlers, all the pedophiles, all the Mr. Trumps, all the wackos, all the saints, all the nice people, whatever, every mind by definition, possesses the potential to be a Buddha. So what does that mean? Well, we've talked about it often enough. The etymology of the word Buddha tells us. But what does it mean? What does this potential mean? It means that you can remove delusions. Ego grasping, the root delusion that causes us to believe in an intrinsic, concrete, solid me. Then all the attachment and anger and the other 83,997 neurotic states of mind that come as a result of all that, Buddha is telling us that they are not at the core of our being. They're adventitious. They're not at the core of our being. They're not intrinsic. So even that is an outrageous concept. And we can spend the rest of the next 5 weeks trying to see the logic of this. But by understanding the logic of this tells us we have Buddha nature. So if every mind has the potential to be a Buddha, every mind has the potential to be utterly rid of, utterly and for eternity and forever, delusions, neuroses, which we in our culture take as a given, so much so that you'd be weird if you didn't have them. That's why this is such an abstract idea for us, because we're so used to the neuroscientific view, which I'm not criticizing. I'm just looking at it at a subtler level, which neuroscientific view can't encompass. So this is an outrageous concept. And if we begin even temporarily to understand this, we would have incredible confidence, we would have perseverance, and we would never give up. But why we give up so easily, why we get hopeless and have self-pity, is because we believe what our potential is hopelessness and misery and depression and anxiety, and that's it. That's what we identify with right now. So this is why this is the powerful practices of identifying with being Tara. Identify, all the Tantric sadhanas are exactly about that. These detailed practices, essentially the essence of it is Buddha's out there first, and you do all these various practices and visualization, then you bring Buddha into you, and then you become a Buddha, and then you do the work of a Buddha. It's essentially that, but some are really complex, some are really simple. But it's the practice of becoming, of identifying with being our potential. It's like imagining yourself as an oak tree. So the causal path is exactly what you do for an oak tree. You get the acorn in the ground, you give it water, you've got to protect it, and it'll slowly grow, slowly. The other approach is kind of like you imagine yourself as an oak tree already. So psychologically, this is incredibly powerful. And this is the whole approach that I've got all the time, made us try to get to understand. And I remember in the beginning, you hear it and it's so uplifting, but because you're so addicted to your misery, because you're so addicted to your believing I'm attached, I'm no good, I'm angry, I'm hopeless, I'm jealous, like this is how we all think, you hear these words coming from Lama's mouth and sort of from the distance. You hold on to it, you're delighted to hear it, you love to hear it, but you don't believe it. We don't believe it, you know. And that's because we have this primordial ego grasping that causes us to believe we are set in stone. So why I like to talk about it, it sort of sounds silly, but you get my point. An acorn is that little round, that little oval thing with a hat. That's what it is visually. But if you don't know what its potential is, what are you going to do? What the best you got an acorn, you'll just think it's pretty. You put it on your shelf. You might paint it. You might smooth it out. You might change hats every day. That's what we do. We identify with being this human being. We identify with this package, and we try to make it the nicest human, smooth out the wrinkles, hope they go away, dread the day when we die. But the best we aim for is being the nicest human. You know, the best we aim for is being a nice carpenter or a nice pianist or a nice artist or a nice, footballer. The best acorn. Best acorn. We try to be the best acorn. And Buddha's saying, hey, babies, hey, children, hey, petals, you've got no idea what your potential is. You've got no comprehension of the inconceivable potential that you've got right now in your mind. That's what he's trying to tell us, So this Buddha nature, you're just talking technically, you can talk about from the conventional point of view, which is the gradual process of doing the work of becoming a Buddha, which is the first stages of practice. But then the other one is that actually the ultimate Buddha nature is the emptiness of your mind, the non-self-existence of your mind, the non-intrinsic character of your mind, the non-inherent existence, the mind not being self-existence. That absence of this intrinsic character is the emptiness of your mind. And in fact, according to Buddha, everything exists because it is empty. We can become a Buddha because our mind has no intrinsic nature. And this is very evident, we think it simply, when we are fully identify with our misery. I am this fat person. I can't do this. I am this, I'm that. I'm miserable. I'm hopeless. Every day it reinforces. 27 people can say you're quite nice. No, I'm not. That is because of ego grasping and because we're obsessed with being an acorn. We can't see past our own nose. All we can see is that shape. All we can see is this limited view of who we think we are. So that's why begin to hear. Even that's why Lama Yeshe in Mahamudra, and he talks about in the chapter, the unbelievable qualities, the unimaginable qualities of your mind that you taste, even when you just get single-pointed concentration. We've had it countless lives, Buddha would say, but we've lost the plot. We've never used it to realize emptiness. We have tasted so many times the incredible qualities of our own mind. And he said, if once you even begin to taste that potential just by doing shamatha, when you really begin to taste it, you'd never want to waste a single second of this life because you realize your mind is beyond unimaginably amazing. This is not meant to be just cosmic religious talk, That's just speaking in a sutra level. So the essence, simply speaking, conventionally, your conventional Buddha nature is the very fact, and this is what we have to now discuss, trying to get some logic. This is in the sutra teachings, but this is the basis of Tantra. Why is it? What is the logic? Because we don't believe it. What is the logic to prove that ego grasping, fears, attachment, anger, and all the others are not at the core of our being? This is a fundamentally necessary point to understand, intellectually first. It's not just some religious idea, your mind's really pure, sounds lovely. What's it mean? It means that this is Buddha's unbelievable point. This is again sutra teachings. His unbelievable point, his unbelievable discovery, his unbelievable recognition and realization, his own direct cognition, and the job that he's done to prove it, is that those delusions, because they are misconceptions, and we're going to go into this, because they are misconceptions, because those states of mind have no basis in reality. That's what a misconception is. It's a thought that is not in sync with reality, whatever level of reality. So delusions by their nature, starting with ego grasping and all the others that come as a result, they are real thoughts and which produce real emotions, which produce the world really like it looks, but they're not valid cognitions. They are not in sync with reality. Therefore, the logic goes, they can be removed. That's the simple logic. So think of that for a second. First, we have to realize that all those emotions like anger and attachment are based in being conceptions. And we'll only get to understand that experientially when we begin to calm down the grosser physical levels. The bodily experience of anger, the bodily experience of attachment or jealousy or depression. The body does not experience depression. The body does not experience anger or attachment, but because the body and the mind are intimately connected. And when we understand the Vajrayana model, how the subtle physical energies are inextricably, the wind energies are inextricably linked with the mind, and everything your thoughts do impacts upon those winds, which impacts upon your body. There's logic to it. When we understand that when we start to go beyond the physical and we get to listen to these thousands of thoughts running in our head, when we start to pay more attention, we will start to recognize that's an attachment thought. And what's an attachment? It's a misconception. It's a thought, but it's not a valid thought. Why? Because it exaggerates the character of the object. That's a lie. Attachment exaggerate, all the delusions embellish. It's their character. They are liars. So if there's a lie in your mind, think about this. This is a really simple example. If there's a lie in your mind, an attachment is a lie. Attachment in the mind makes the cake look like more delicious than it is, and makes it look like it's cause of my happiness. Ego grasping in the mind, which informs attachment, makes the cake look inherently delicious, inherently in itself divine. These are the way these lies function. So if there's a lie in your mind, let's look at how it's not at the core of your being and therefore can be removed. This is really simple, but it's a bit shocking to hear it. If I think that 1 + 1 is 3, I'm learning English. I say I'm learning English and learning math, and I forget. I say 1 + 1 is 3. Now, that is a thought. It's a concept in my mind, isn't it? But we know, because we know simple math, that it's a misconception. We've all agreed in conventional world that 1 + 1 is 2. We've agreed upon that. That's our established way we talk. We've agreed that 1 + 1 is 2. So that in relation to that conventional truth, my thought is a misconception. It's not in sync with reality. That's really straightforward. So what am I going to do with that? Well, you tell me, Robina, don't be silly. You've forgotten again. You've forgotten your math, girl. 1 + 1 is 2, sweetheart. And I'll go, I forgot. So now, what's happened now in my mind? I now have in my mind, confidently, another thought. And the thought is 1 + 1 is 2. Now, that is a valid concept. That is a valid cognition. It's a valid cognition, even conventionally. So now the question is, what happened to the previous thought? 1 + 1 is 3. It's evident. I'll tell you what happened to it. It's gone. And where's it gone? Disappeared into space. Not one atom left. Why has it gone? Because I've realized the truth. So the recognition of truth is what annihilates the lie. That's really simple. So if ego grasping is a lie, and attachment is a lie, and all the other delusions are liars, by seeing the truth, which is dependent arising, it annihilates the lies, and that's how you realize, and that's how you become a Buddha. So therefore, Buddha says, delusions are not at the core of our being. That's what he means. But if we hear anger or fear and think that you can get rid of them, this just sounds ridiculous to us, because we don't realize that they're rooted in being invalid cognitions. They have no basis in reality. So we've got to learn the truth, reality, and that conquers the lies. That conquers the lies. So when you, as Lama Yeshe says, when you finally have identified in your mind exactly how you think the fantasy I exist, when you finally recognize it exactly, that second you will see the truth, that it doesn't exist. And then you'll realize dependent arising. As His Holiness said, you know. Never mind that, it's not about here. But the crucial thing to get is this logic in Buddhist psychology presented based upon the presentation of the mind, this extensive presentation that if you want to be Buddhist, you need to study it. And it's super fascinating, both the epistemological model and the psychological model, the way the mind functions and then the contents of the mind. And the crucial piece is, and this is why this distinction, which whenever I talk about the mind, I talk about it, Buddha divides all the millions of thoughts in our head into 3 categories. Those that are valid, reasonable, like wisdom, clarity, kindness, generosity, forgiveness, blah, blah, blah. They're valid, relatively speaking, valid. Relatively speaking, they're in sync with reality. Let's look at that. So love is a virtue and attachment is a non-virtue. Okay, speak simply. Just speak simply. So a non-virtue has a characteristic of being a misconception. That's why it causes us to do negative things, thus create non-virtue, just thus create suffering. But love is a valid concept, is a valid cognition. So that's really curious. Why? What is it about it that is valid? Well, I'll tell you, attachment is rooted in the root lie of self-existence, of inherent existence, of intrinsic existence. It's a lie. It's a lie on top of that lie, and all the other lies come as a result. So it's rooted in the root lie. In other words, when there's ego grasping, there's a profound sense of a separate, lonely, bereft, concrete, set in stone me. That is an invalid concept. There is no such me as that, but we believe in that one. So when you have then a branch delusion on the basis of that attachment, that's why the object appears out there to you as separate from you, and you have to grasp at it to shove it in a hole. That's all a misconception. It's rooted in being a misconception. That's why we suffer, because you keep believing in lies. It's like you got $5, but you keep believing it's 50. Every time you go to spend it, you're disappointed. And that builds up and builds up and builds up and builds up until you go crazy. That's attachment. So why is love a valid concept? It's a very surprising thought. Not because it's just nice, because it is also a concept, and it is rooted in dependent arising. So check this. If I'm having a conversation with Mary, and we're friendly. You can even see our body language. We're leaning towards each other. She laughs at my jokes. I laugh at her jokes. We crack jokes. We're friendly. We're kind. There's a bit of compassion, a bit of love there. You can say that virtue at that moment is predominating. Now think of this. Interdependence is how everything exists. Interdependence is everything is in the simplest kind of easygoing concept. Everything is interdependently connected. When she and I are more in touch with virtue, love, empathy, kindness, generosity, there's a feeling, is there not, between us of connectedness. This is not meant to be cosmic, it's literal. There's a feeling of connectedness. There's a feeling, in other words, there's a vivid feeling of I is not there, it's gone quiet. And a vivid feeling for Mary of her I is gone quiet. And there's more of a feeling of connected, there's a connectedness. That's because love is a valid concept that in my mind is causing me to reach out to Mary and want her to be happy. She sees me and wants me to be happy. That's rooted in dependent arising. It's rooted in dependent arising. But then let's say Mary says a mean word and I suddenly panic. Oh, what do you mean by that? Suddenly, then we start to fight. You can see our body language. We jerk away from each other. Suddenly we're looking paranoid at each other. Suddenly anger arises. Attachment arises. What's happened? The ego grasping is like a sleeping lion before is woken up. And now there's a vivid feeling of, how dare you do that to me? This is now the lies taking over, which are rooted in no sense of interdependence, no sense of harmony, no sense of connectedness, no sense of we. It's all I. That's because the lies have now come to the surface. I think we can kind of see this. So when you're in less delusions, even a little bit every day, more virtue, and therefore more wisdom, more interdependence. Love and compassion are completely linked, are completely rooted in the conventional truth of interdependence. We haven't realized the ultimate truth yet. There's still, even when we're being virtuous and haven't yet realized emptiness, there's still a sense of self-existent me loving self-existent Mary, but that's better than nothing. When delusions are there, it's no truth whatsoever. There's just me with my fantasy of mean Mary and her with her fantasy of mean Robina and poor self-pity me. Look at the nightmare of the universe, because we're believing in lies. We've got to see this. So Buddha nature is the fact, the logical, the actual purity of your mind ultimately is that because you can remove all delusions from your mind. That's even conventional one. The conventional is that because the delusions are not stuck in who you are. That's a conventional truth. They're not at the core of your being. So you can remove them. Why? How? By seeing the lies and by arguing with the truth. That's it. That's how you become Buddha. That's why the essential job of being a Buddhist from high school on is to distinguish between the facts and the fictions. That's the essential job of being a Buddhist. And how you won't do that if you don't know Buddha's view of the mind, because this is quite distinct. And then there's confidence that comes, because we know no matter how miserable the anger is, no matter how horrible the depression is, we in our mind, because we've thought about it, we've looked at it, we've read the teachings, we have confidence that yes, it is there, and yes, it is real, and yes, it's horrible, but it is not at the core of my being. It does not define me. And then when you add Tara and the other practices on top of it in Tantra, that's when it gives you incredible courage, because when you're visualizing yourself as Tara, imagining you are Tara, and then when you take the vows and the commitments, when you take highest Tantra, and you have a commitment to think of yourself as Tara every day, to think of everybody else as Tara, to hear all sound as mantra, you're forcefully lifting your game. You're lifting your view. You are literally developing pure view. You are beginning to forcefully see the positive qualities out there, the potential of every person, and it completely transforms the mind. You're not living in la la land. You know perfectly well people are suffering, but you're not focusing on it. You see the suffering, that never goes away, but you can see everyone's potential. This is why the Dalai Lama for 60, 70 years has never given up, because he's got a complete realization of his own potential, but he sees that goodness is intrinsic in every being. It might be 57 million lives before it comes, but it's always there. Our Buddha nature can never be destroyed, because emptiness is the actual nature of our mind. And the conventional Buddha nature, that we can remove the weeds gradually and grow the flowers, is there. This is logic for Buddha. It's not cross your fingers and hope for the best. So doing these practices, and then even not even doing, but every day. So how do you do it every day? By having this awareness of yourself, not as just self-pity me, not as poor me, that no one loves me and I'm hopeless, I'm fat, I'm this, I'm that, and looking out hungrily for people to love us, which is what attachment is, but having some sense of self-respect, some sense of my own potential as Tara, It's unbelievable. And you don't go around looking like a green lady. You have to dress yourself like as a green lady. That's ridiculous. You understand the logic of what she represents, and you begin to identify with that part of yourself. So so in yourself, you become more self-respectful. You recognize, you see the delusions there, but you don't have a panic attack about them. You let them be quiet. You're under control. You know they're there. It's okay. But you enhance, you identify with your good qualities. And then especially, and this is based on bodhicitta, when you're with others, you present the best possible for other people. Right now, when we're utterly miserable, think about it. And it's reasonable. We're all very suffering. As soon as you haven't met a friend for years, and you see her in the street, and your boyfriend left you yesterday. How are you, Robina? You'll burst into tears and vomit your entire heart out for the next hour, because you're desperate to talk to somebody, because you're so full of despair, because we don't know how to hold our own emotions. We don't have a sense of potential. Because when the delusions arise, all we see is misery, and we believe this is who I am. Why do you think we kill ourselves? Because we see no light at the end of the tunnel. So when you've got more sense of self-respect, and you've got this idea that you've got Tara and Chenrezig and all the other deities, and whichever one you identify with, whichever one is necessary at the time, and you have it's not just weird like thinking you're a green lady, but you identify with those qualities. And Tara particularly, let's say, is power, action, confidence, courage, optimism, action energy, cut through the obstacles. I can do it. We need that. That's what you're doing. When you identify as Tara, that's what you're identifying with. When you're identifying with Chenrezig, you're identifying with your love and your compassion and your empathy. When you're identifying with Manjushri, you're identifying with your wisdom, your clarity. That's what it means, because they're just psychological expressions, that's all, of things in your mind. So you identify those, you bring them to the surface. It's like you're playing in a role, like you're playing a role, you're practicing acting. That way. That's what Tantra is. It's literally like you're acting it, you're faking it till you make it. And that's a powerful way to become it. Don't just think it's kind of wishful, just crossing your fingers and hope for the best. No, it's logical. It's logical. So that's the interesting point too. As I said, Lama Yeshe would talk about how we don't know how to be happy. It's really true. When we're overwhelmed by attachment, let's say, neediness, not fair, not good enough, not big enough, I'm hopeless. And we might, and especially when we become Buddhists, and Lama Yeshe could see this, we start to look at our delusions even more. Oh my God, I can't believe how bad I am. We go on like it's a virtue to talk about your worst delusions possible. I'm so attached. I'm so angry. I'm so jealous. Oh my God, it's so terrible. I can't bear it. I mean, we've got to see it, but we don't have to wear it on our heart on our sleeve, So then Lama would try to sort of, he'd also do picnics. He'd have picnics and parties. We actually thought Lama liked picnics. Good Lord. Couldn't care about a picnic. We needed the picnics. Try to relax us and make us happy, give it a break, back off. It's sort of like trying to get us to be a bit happy. So give us nice things and be happy. We don't know how to, he said, you don't know how to be happy. And why? Well, this is from one of our talks, another class. When we understand that we've got the delusions, attachment, this hunger, this huge emotional hunger. yearning for happiness, but never know how to get it. Because whenever we get what we get, we're never satisfied. So we increase our dissatisfaction. But when we begin to understand the potential for happy feelings, remember in the third category of the states of mind that we learn about in the sutra teachings in the high school, Buddha, the third category of states of mind that are neither negative nor positive, they're these mechanics of the mind. Oddly enough, the one that's called feeling is in there, along with concentration, good memory, intention, attention, discrimination, vigilance. There's many of these, all of which are working overtime to help us have whatever experiences we have. So we really cultivate those in meditation, in concentration meditation. So this one, feeling, we only ever have three kinds: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Well, let's look at the neutral. Pleasant feeling is another word for happiness. Like I've been talking before, when we're so full of attachment and we so believe the cake is the cause of my happiness, we even think the cake is the happiness. When you describe your happiness, you describe the object. When you describe your happiness, you describe the boyfriend. No, he's just a catalyst to trigger a happy feeling, which is in your mind. Feeling, happiness is in the mind. Happiness is in the mind. It's a feeling. It's not a concept, it's a feeling. It's a concept, but it's just a feeling of pleasure, a feeling of pleasure. That's called happiness. So in Tantra, you're consciously, actively, consciously wanting to cultivate happy feelings, Not just be hysterical or ridiculous. So first of all, virtue brings happy feelings. Virtue brings it. But you got to cultivate it. But when you identify, so by being kind, by thinking of others, put bodhicitta in the mix. Straight away, you're becoming more kind. When you're more kind, your mind is more happy, But learning how to then even the way, this is where in the Bodhisattva path. So first of all, First of all, in junior school, you leave the cake there because you're so full of attachment, you're just going to be a junkie. So you leave the cake there, you have some control. By the time you've controlled your mind a little bit in high school, you've harnessed the attachment. You're no longer quite in the thrall of the cake. You can even argue you can have a bit of cake without the mind going too berserk, as Lamrim puts it, because you've harnessed your attachment. Now the Bodhisattva path, your compassion is so enormous that you'd happily eat cake just to make someone else happy. It's not going to disturb you. By the time you get to Tantra, when you're so advanced, got renunciation, bodhicitta, emptiness, you actively are able to actively really get pleasure from that cake, and your mind won't be berserk. I mean, how marvelous. We want happiness. That's all we ever want is pleasant feelings. But when we become Buddhists, we start to get guilty and we conflate attachment with happiness. So we think we're supposed to give up our attachment, give up our happiness. We just don't understand what we're talking about. It's just nonsense. Buddha's methods that help us get so happy, you can't believe it. So to have a happy mind, when you eat the cake, instead of shoving it in mindlessly, literally the pleasure will come. That's still there. Your tongue doesn't fall out of your mouth when you've got renunciation. Your tongue will still have a result. When it meets the cake, there'll be a resultant happy feeling. So when you've got less grasping at it, like frantic, you'll be able to have more pleasure, quite literally. But if you're so grasping at the cake and so frantic and so needy and so emotional, you'll eat the cake and you won't even notice. As Lamrim said, when we are driven by attachment, even the best happiness in the world, he talked about when people have sex, that you're so greedy for it, you're like there's no awareness. You can become completely dull. Attachment dulls your mind completely. There's no awareness, and therefore there's really no pleasure. It's just frantic grasping. So when you've harnessed attachment, lessened the attachment, and no longer driven by it, you're able to have the cake, and it will trigger pleasure. That's the function of cake meeting tongue. We're built like that. So because your attachment is subdued, you will have more pleasure, literally. I mean, we should be so excited. Buddha's got a method to get more happy. What's our problem? What stops us from happy feelings is attachment and anger and low self-esteem and misery and arrogance and depression and anxiety. They poison any possibility of having happiness, I mean, Australians, we love our Vegemite toast. The English like their Marmite. I can't bear Marmite. I can't hate Promite even more. And other ridiculous, no, you Americans, you taste it and you think it's the most disgusting thing you've ever seen, this ugly black thing. But we adore our Vegemite, and English adore their Marmite. Anyway, we love our Vegemite toast in Australia. So people give me Vegemite. I've got about 6 jars, When you mix it on your toast with lots of butter, it's the most divine taste. So even just your Vegemite toast, your mind loses all control. Well, you're greedily expecting it, isn't the anticipation, the waiting, the hunger, you put it in the mouth, you're so excited, and you just ate it, and you go, Oh, what happened? Did I eat my toast? You don't even remember. That's the greed of attachment. You've got more control over your attachment. And that's why in the Bodhisattva path, and before you shove it in, you offer it. Already that brings bliss. You see a delicious toast out there and it's vibrating at you, demanding you eat it. But you do the blessing first. You imagine it's nectar. You imagine all the gurus experiencing the joy of having it, you know. And if you go for dinner with Lama Zopa, I promise you, you better give up renunciation. You better have renunciation. My friends in Santa Fe 20 years ago, they invited Rinpoche for dinner. The Surrettes, people in Santa Fe know. And they began blessing, Rinpoche began blessing the dinner that Sylvia had kindly made, took several hours, no doubt, at 9 p.m. And they began eating at 2 a.m. They said they enjoyed it. I can't imagine. That's Lama Zopa. One time on an aeroplane, you know, he's famous for his offering of food. I'm going off the spot here. I'll come back to pleasure in a minute. So it was a short flight, and the dinners come, and Rinpoche's doing all his blessings, all his prayers, all his visualizing all the Buddhas, experiencing the bliss of receiving this dinner, blah, 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 blah. Because in Tantra, the very essence of the word to offer, or puja, to offer, or Tibetan chur, the very essence of the meaning in Tantra of the word to offer is to visualize the recipients, and in this case, all the gurus, all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, experiencing the joy of experiencing it, of having it, you know. So there's Rinpoche doing all these practices, and the people come away to take the tray. And Rod just says to Rinpoche, do you want to eat your dinner? And Rinpoche said, oh, the main purpose has been achieved. Because he gets pleasure from even offering to the Buddhas, you know. But for us, you know, so even the Bodhisattva one, before you shove it in the mouth mindlessly, it is vibrating delicious. Don't deny it is delicious. Don't worry about it. But you think of it first offering to others, and then you eat it, and then you've got to enjoy it more because you're not so greedy. So this is logic. This is logic. And that's what Lama Yeshe said. We don't know how to tap into that capacity for joy because we're so overwhelmed by, I'm miserable, oh, it's a sin, I shouldn't feel happy. I mean, Lama Yeshe said, you know, he kept saying, the more pleasure, the better. Come on. But we were nervous hearing it because it sounds like a sin. Pleasure. I mean, happiness maybe, but pleasure, not sure about that. So how you learn to be joyful is by lessening attachment. And that's the point. When you lessen your attachment, which is your emotional greed, your tongue doesn't fall out. Your tongue doesn't freeze over. Your tongue is still there. And this is the beginning of Tantra. The essence of the Tantric one is because your attachment is so subdued, you're not driven by it, you're not frantic, and then you give space. Because you've got a tongue and the cake is delicious and you taste it and the bliss is so superior to when you just grasp at it like a pig, you know. This is logic. And this is the Tantric psychology, you know. So when your delusion is subdued, you've still got a body of the five senses. So the yogis, the great yogis, have far more bliss because they don't have, not like really little, greedy, grasping little vampires, you know. Because that's the point of Tantra. It utilizes the fact that you've got the technology of these white and red drops and the channels and the airs. So the highly evolved yogis, they're able to completely utilize all that. And they constantly got joy. It's just unnatural. The mind, when it's unencumbered by delusions, is joyful. That's even sutra teachings. Tantra taps into that. So just in daily life, you'll be more joyful, more happy. More joy, no matter how bad the world is, you have compassion, and you never, you know, your mind can't not be joyful, but you add compassion to that. It's not self-centered happiness. It's the nature of your mind to the degree it is unencumbered by delusions, you know. So this is sutra teachings even, but when in Tantra, you're utilizing this, you understand this. So these practices enable you to identify with your joy, your bliss, your wisdom, your clarity. And by doing these practices, as it says, the resultant path, you bring that future result right now into the present. It's so potent, you know, so marvelous. Ask me some questions, you people now, please. Any more questions? Are there any there, Mary?
No, there's no questions in the chat.
Does anybody have any questions for me? Just pop your hand up and talk to me, or unmute yourself and chat away. Nothing? Huh? Paula, good sweetheart. Paula's in Tokyo. Must be early there, my God.
No, it's quite okay.
Oh, good. Good,
Thank
darling.
you very much for the teaching. Is this might be a really stupid question, but
That's
anyway,
fine.
absolute reality. Does love exist in absolute reality? Does anything
Okay,
exist?
that's a very good, that's a
in
great
reality?
question, Paula. Okay, great question, Paula. Paula, I'll tell you that. Okay. Okay, so when you as a yogi, let's say, are in single pointed concentration, which is necessarily beyond your senses and beyond your conceptuality, which is the level we live at all the time, when you've gone beyond that to the subtlest level of your own capacity for cognition, your own consciousness, your own mind, and you have a realization of this absolute reality of emptiness of everything, then there is only that. There is no appearance of anything. But when you come out of your meditation and back into the world, then the conventional character of your mind takes over, which is infinite love, infinite compassion, infinite wisdom, infinite kindness, infinite virtue, infinite goodness. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you very, very much.
It's all there. But so finally, when you're a Buddha, when you're no longer any dualism whatsoever, you have the recognition of the absolute nature of everything is simultaneous with with your own virtues of love and infinite wisdom and infinite compassion, infinite kindness. So then it is oneness for you. All of these experiences are there simultaneous. And because you understand the nature of everything. And virtue in a conventional sense, even a conventional sense, virtue, goodness, clarity. I said before, even when Mary and I are having a kindness, even at a simple level, we are more in tune with the conventional character of our mind, which is love and compassion and empathy. And they are rooted in dependent arising, which is the logic to prove emptiness. Dependent arising is the flip side of emptiness, is the flip side of the ultimate. The flip side is the conventional way of putting the absolute. The absolute way of putting things, everything's empty, and the conventional way of putting it, everything's dependent arising. So when we're even in our conventional states of kindness and love, we're already in sync with, to some degree, interdependence. It's implicit in those virtues. And so only when we've realized emptiness and we've cut the root of all the delusions, that we now simultaneously realize emptiness and simultaneously live at the conventional level as well. I don't know if that's helpful. Something like that, Paula.
Very,
Okay.
very
Good, darling. What else, people?
Venerable Robina, there's 2 questions in the chat.
Good.
The first one is, Venerable Robina, would you speak of guru devotion, incorrect and correct? And that's from Christopher and Dawn.
Okay. Well, that's another whole topic, and that's a very interesting topic. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll talk about it from for me, they don't talk about it in this sort of way in the teachings, but I find this really necessary and powerful. And when you'll hear it, it's super practical. So so first of all that, as we know in the Buddhist teachings, and particularly in the Vajrayana Buddhist teachings, but in all the Buddhist teachings, it is crucial. We need a person forget Buddhist teachings. We know in our daily lives that we need somebody in front of us who looks and sounds like me, that shows me what I can become. Tennis, cooking, you name it. It's very logical. And even if I keep talking about it at the level of cooking, it will apply exactly to spiritual teachings. And for me, all the more reason to use an ordinary example. It makes it all the more powerful. You can't mystify it. We certainly mystify these things. Guru devotion. So listen. That's why I continually use the example of my mother showing me how to make a cake. But forget that one. Anything. But if you want to learn something, you need to learn it from a person who knows how to do it. I think in our life, that's how we've learned everything. So clearly, if you want to learn how to do anything, you need to check on that person to see if they know how to do it. That seems awfully reasonable. Don't just ask anybody because they look cute. You don't go to a doctor because they look cute. They might be idiots. You check that they've got knowledge. Then you're confident. When you're confident, you then say, and you'd like to learn that. You want to learn how to play tennis. I want to learn how to play music. I will check on those teachers. And then I need that person. I can read a book. I can listen to records and I will get pretty good at music. But you know yourself, the minute you have a human being in front of you who is actually playing music, it's beyond profound. It's beyond profound. You've got a real person, and you've checked on that person. You like that person. You've checked on their reputation. You're confident they've got knowledge. You're confident that they want you to learn. Everything has come together perfectly, and guarantee you will become a musician very quickly. So what's devotion? Well, we've got a human heart, people. We've got a human heart. As Lama Yeshe says, we're all dying for love. A human heart wants to connect with others. A human heart is reaching out, and that's a valid, powerful quality. So if you've got that teacher, that cook, that teacher, that violin teacher, whoever it might be, Kung Fu teacher, I don't care, and you've checked, you're confident, you've seen them, their students are good, their peers say they're good, you go to their classes, they can see that you want their Kung Fu. I went to Mr. Lee 6 days. I went to my Mr. Lee for my Kung Fu. He's not a stupid guy. He must have deduced Robina wants his Kung Fu. She's there 6 days a week, and if he taught 7, I would have gone on 7 days. So clearly he thought, wow, Robina needs Kung Fu. She wants my Kung Fu. So he gave me his Kung Fu, and he gave it as much as he could, and he pushed me to the limit. I had confidence in Mr. Lee. I didn't use the word devotion. What's devotion mean? My heart was open. I was ready. And what does devotion mean? What does heart open mean? It means not thinking, who does he think he is? It means not thinking, oh, angry, how dare he say that to me? Who does he think he is? Oh, I'm not sure I'd think this. Oh, I don't think he really knows what he's talking about. If you've got a mind full of junk, if you've got a mind full of doubt, full of confusion, full of not sure, I'm not sure if Mr. Lee knows Kung Fu, you will get 0 Kung Fu from Mr. Lee. He might be the best Kung Fu master in the universe, but if you're not confident, and if you have not asked him, and then you not shown you want his Kung Fu, you will not get Kung Fu. So devotion is an open heart, but don't give your heart to some peanut like we do. Check up. As Pabonka says, you better check your guru very carefully. You're going to end up like him. So you check your teacher, you check your Lama, you check their reputation, you check their heart, and then you go to their class and you show you want it. Please give me your Kung Fu, Mr. Lee, I said. And I turned up 6 days in a row. The man is not stupid. He could see I wanted it, so he gave me. My heart was open, and I took his Kung Fu, and I turned into my own Mr. Lee. That's the point of a guru, you know. Now, if I start doubting, what's he doing there? Why is he saying this? I'm going to sue him. Oh, he shouted at me. Oh, I don't think he's good enough. Then you close the door. Finish. No more Kung Fu. You're dead. Nothing. So your heart's got to be open, but you base your heart open on intelligence, not on attachment. You've checked. You're confident. And when you're confident, even when he shouted at me, I was honored that he shouted at me because he knew I wanted his Kung Fu. And I knew he wanted to give it to me. So it was a mutual connected relationship. And my heart was open. I didn't use the word devotion with him. It's like that. It's like that. Same with the guru. So this is uncharted territory. The commonest question in religious teachers, people say, you need a teacher. It really shows how idiotic we are. You need a teacher to show you how to make a cake. This is uncharted territory. Becoming a Buddha, for goodness sake. So the more you check up on that person, the more confident you are. Look at how everybody likes His Holiness. It's easy to check on him. The world adores him. Okay, if you're Chinese communist, you don't. But those of us who like him, it's easy to be devoted. You go to the class. I mean, when I travel with His Holiness as one of his security guards 30, 40 years ago, nearly 40 years ago, Lama Yeshe asked 10 of us to be security guards for his visit to Europe, 2 months. We traveled with him. It was mind-boggling to see the response he evoked in people. He was being funny and a funny fellow, you know. He was not holy, walking around looking like holy. He cracked jokes, you know. I remember these in Italy when all the local governments would send their security, they send their police details, you know. So these young, arrogant Italian, well, arrogant, everybody's arrogant, Italian, doesn't matter. So terrorist squad with their machine guns over their shoulder. And the first day, 10 days they had to be at the center. And Lama had made us summer security guards. So there was me in my little skirt and my lippy, because Lama made us wear lay clothes. Every time he saw me with my lippy on, he said, oh, I think I like you better like that. Lippy is lipstick for Australians. So we had the little uniforms, and I would stand next to these ridiculous Italians, and they thought I was an idiot, you know, and I'd watch. Then His Holiness, by the end of the 10th day, he had these Italian little guys in the palm of his hand, and he'd just crack them on the back and crack a joke. He didn't do anything holy, didn't do anything magic, because he's got this powerful persona, this total love and compassion. There's no ego there. So he's funny and practical. So when you have devotion in the Dalai Lama, it means you trust what he's saying, you open your heart, and the number of people you see tears running down their street, you know, tears running down their face. Because there's something about him that's so clear, and you pick it up, you get it, you know. This is not cosmic, this is practical. So we get that with attachment with a boyfriend, but he's an idiot. We give our heart to some idiot because we're as blind as a bat. So don't just follow our attachment, use your common sense. And then once you've got this, we can have many teachers. Lama Zopa's got 150 gurus or something, or 20 or 80 or whatever. I've got quite a few. You practice, you've got to practice that. You practice, you check on the person, you check on their qualities, and then you decide. And you have to cultivate this view that every word they say is a teaching from my mind. And if you have confidence in them, the teaching, like Mr. Lee, everything he said, I'd listen and I did it. If as soon as delusions would come into my mind, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, that's the end of my kung fu. So devotion is an open heart, but put your devoted heart on somebody who's worthwhile. It's logic when you understand devotion. When your heart's open, everything can go flooding in. When the delusions are there, your heart is closed. You can get nothing. It's sort of logic. That to me is how you talk about guru devotion. Don't be idiotic about it. But you've got to have pure view, because Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, both of them, really tough in my experience. So if we're just attachment and craving to be stroked and praised every day. One time, I wanted a meeting with Lama Zopa in France, and there was nobody else around, and Annette, the nun, took me to his room, and I could see him there sitting in his room. He was at the office, and Annette went in and said, Rinpoche, Robina's outside, and Rinpoche said nothing. So Annette repeated, Robina's outside, and he said nothing. So she tried third time, he ignored. So she came out and walked out and shrugged her shoulders. So I could have been offended. How dare Lama Zopa not see me? Oh, he thinks I'm terrible, and off go all the paranoid dramas. No, it was a teaching from my mind. Thank you, Lama Zopa. Clearly, I didn't need to see you. That's the permission. And that's the other point. When you choose your guru, and you give them permission. You give them permission. I gave Lama Zopa permission to show me my mind. That's his job. Not kung fu, not cooking. Show me my mind. He showed me my mind right there. He didn't have to say a word. He ignored me. It was perfect. If I want his teaching, Mr. Lee would shout at me. I didn't get insulted because I knew he wanted to show me my mind, to show me, no, not my mind, to show me kung fu. So you've got to be confident to have a person do that. You've got to be confident. You've got to be confident that he means well. If you're so paranoid and self-centered, oh, Lama Zopa mustn't love me, and you go with all the paranoid conspiracy theories, and then you go mad, like we all do. No, it's a teaching right there. Right there, right that second, right there. And who decided that? I did. Who gave permission to Lama Zopa to do that? I did. I'm the boss. That's how I can talk about it. I can't talk about it any better than that. I'm sorry. So I hope that answers your question, Dawn and Christopher. There's more to it than that, obviously. It's not sentimental. It's not attachment. It's logic if you think it through like this, Okay, people, any other questions?
Yes, Venerable Robina, the next question is, today is Martin Luther King's birthday. He had so many traits of a Buddha. Might he have been a Buddha?
Of course. But I'm sorry to disappoint you, but so can Mr. Trump. Why? Let me tell you why. By the time you get to the Bodhisattva path, you've got complete control over your delusions. You're no longer in the thrall of attachment or anger or whatever. You mightn't even have realized emptiness yet. And then you get this outrageous levels of unbelievable compassion, unbelievable wisdom. You've got clairvoyance, you can see the minds of others, you can see their past karma, and because you're no longer in the thrall of delusions, you can do whatever it takes to be of benefit to sentient beings. So that's why you hear like these stories, of one naughty thing that a bodhisattva would do. Like I know when this story of this bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas going from life to life to life to life to life, perfecting their path to Buddhahood, and they're hooking and connecting eyeball to eyeball sentient beings. Because how come the Dalai Lama, millions of people like him? It's because we're so clever. It's because for life after life after life after life after life, in his journey to his own, and traveling through lifetimes, he has made eyeball to eyeball contact with each one of us and hooked us. So then we see his name, we go, oh, isn't he amazing? Like we think we're so clever. No, he's hooked us one at a time, eyeball to eyeball. And he must have used peaceful methods because we think he's gorgeous. He's hooked all the millions of tiny. What's going on? Someone's got their thing on. Mary, what's happening? Okay. So anyway, he must have used really wrathful methods to get the Chinese because they hate him. But he got him. He got him. He got him. People don't even know Dalai Lama. It's better. This story shows it. This particular bodhisattva going from life to life in this particular village. And the point about a bodhisattva is they don't walk around with halos. They're not necessarily holy looking monks and nuns, but they're going from life to life, doing their practice, developing bodhicitta, practicing and connecting with sentient beings. So he was in this village and everybody liked him. And the best way to help sentient beings is peacefully. This is coming to Tantra too now. The best way, there are various methods to benefit sentient beings. This is even in the Bodhisattva path, but certainly in the Tantric path, which is based on bodhicitta. Peaceful methods are the best. So there's lots of these deities who are peaceful, but there are some that are really wrathful. They'd scare the life out of you if you met them in a human form, because some people are a bit thick-headed and need wrathful methods. So he used peaceful methods, and he hooked all these people in this village. He made karmic connection with them. But then you're going to meet in future life. You've got to have a connection to meet in future life. You've got to create history with each other. So one woman didn't see him, didn't notice him, and he couldn't leave her behind. Meaning, when she was ready to be led to enlightenment 47 lives later, when he would have met her, she wouldn't recognize him. So he couldn't leave her behind. He had to make a karmic connection with her. So peaceful methods didn't work. So he discovered she had this beautiful garden. So he rode his horse through her garden, destroying it. Well, excuse me, now she noticed him, shaking her fist and shouting and yelling, and he was so happy. Now, excuse me, if you were there, please put this on the earth. If you were there and you saw this guy on his horse ride through this woman's beautiful garden, you would not say, oh, there's a bodhisattva trying to get this woman. You'd chuck him out of town or throw him in prison. What you would have seen is a very angry, mean person. But you could not see, in fact, that he was a bodhisattva. This is where it's really intense. And this is especially in Tantra, but also in the bodhisattva teachings. Also in the bodhisattva teachings, because the person who's got subdued body, speech, and mind, who's no longer in the thrall of delusions, has got clairvoyance, has incredible compassion, probably has wisdom as well. This person is capable of doing whatever is necessary to benefit a sentient being. It's like supreme tough love, if that's necessary. So what was the question? I forget where I'm going with this. What was the question? Mary? What was the question, Mary?
The question was, I have to get it back here, sorry.
If Martin Luther King was a Buddha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I said, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I know this sounds shocking. I mean, beyond shocking. But if we understand the junior school and high school teachings, and this is why this is preparation for Tantra, why you can't possibly understand how there could possibly be a deity called Yamantaka with 47 arms and legs that would scare the life out of you, and that people manifest as Yamantaka, and it's transforming anger into the path. But it's utterly based on bodhicitta and wisdom. If you can't comprehend that possibility, then that's why it's all insane nonsense. So at the first level, you've controlled your body, speech, and mind. At the next level, bodhicitta, you've transformed this paradigm shift where only the wish to benefit others is present in your mind. Even that's insane in our culture. We can't believe that's possible. Plus, you've got wisdom and compassion and clairvoyance and everything else. So you will do whatever is necessary. I think I remember one, so that would mean it wouldn't be impossible that a maniac, a Mr. Trump, assuming you don't like Mr. Trump, assuming you think he's a horrible person, if you think he's a saint, then that's a different view. But if let's say a person you don't like who looks like they're harming others, this is too hard for our minds to understand. And if we don't understand this logically, based on the teachings, we are absolutely not ready to even to begin to think about Tantra. That's why renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness absolutely are the basis of an ability to understand, even intellectually, the Tantric philosophy and psychology. That everything can be used, meaning methods. In other words, in Tantra, you've got 4 different ways that you benefit sentient beings. The first 3, one is it's a peaceful aspect. You act nicely. That's the best one. Then there's wrathful aspect. You mean you'd be tough love. That guy running through that woman's garden, the reason was he wanted to make a karmic connection with her. She didn't notice him. And as the Lama who told this story said, when it comes to bodhisattvas, it's better to have a bad connection with them, meaning she shouted and yelled at him and hated him, but she made a karmic connection. She created some history with him. It's better to have that than to have no connection. So the whole point of why would a mother use tough love on you? Why would your mother, after 4 times she's told you no more chocolate and you haven't heard it, she finally has to say, I've told you no more chocolate, you go to your room. So if she's a good mother, we know she's motivated by compassion. So we can understand that level of just being a mummy and having valid, looking like she's angry, because she knows it is the best method for you. We get that. So just multiply that a few thousand, you've got a bodhisattva. And you multiply that a few millions, you've got a person who looks like a maniac destroying the world. And it could be that he's got the wisdom to see that by Americans having this maniac person who's bringing up all the vomit and all the dramas and all the racism and all the white supremacists coming to the surface. They've always been there, I promise. America's never been any different. They've just been living under this illusion of being this holy people with rubbish. Excuse me, now they're exposing their rubbish, their underbelly. That's always been there. Mr. Trump is great. He's brought it to the surface. We should be thanking him. He could be the Buddha. We do not know. This is not illogical. It is not insane. So I'm sorry to shock you, whoever asked the question. But yes, indeed, back to your question. Of course it's possible that Martin Luther King could be the Buddha. Of course it is, sweetheart. But also Mr. Trump, showing the wrathful aspect of Buddha. Martin Luther King will show the peaceful aspect. So if you'd like to respond to me, whoever asked that question. Who asked that question?
Steve Copeman?
I did.
What do you think, Steve? Was that something to hear?
I think there's a lot of food for thought in your answer. That's a great answer. Thank you.
Food for thought, Steve, that's right. No, but this is the interesting point. Forget the wrathful ones. Look at the good ones. There's no question. There's no doubt. Because a Buddha, if there can be a person who's a Buddha, the point is they don't always go around manifesting as a nice, holy person. They might just be a nice person. That could easily be, even the next door neighbor could be a Buddha. That's often Tibetans have a lovely saying. They say, you don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. Do you understand? So, I mean, even recently, always you hear about these stories of this Lama Zopa, for example, in his book about death. He talked about this great yogi who died and really showing he was a great yogi, but he was the humblest, simplest monk who worked in the kitchen in the monastery. He wasn't the scholar. He wasn't the evident yogi, but the way he died, it showed he was a great yogi. So there can be very many hidden people. That's also very true, isn't it? You can have hidden qualities, but act like you're really humble and like you're nobody. And they can be the highest evolved people. That's definitely a possibility. So of course it's true. Mr. Trump, Mr. Martin Luther King is so special. I know, I agree with you. I agree. But it's an interesting concept. And the only way to get this, though, Steve, is by understanding the teaching, understanding the logic of how we can rid the mind of delusions, and then you're on the bodhisattva path, and you use whatever method is most beneficial for sentient beings. That's pretty profound, it's pretty vast. And then Tantra is the ultimate in that view, the most advanced in that philosophy and that psychology. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. It's a really good point. Thank you. What else, people? Do we have 2 hours or an hour and a half? I forget.
We have 2 hours, Venerable Robina. We have about 45 minutes left.
Okay, fine. 40. Okay, good. So what other questions, people? Okay, no more. That's fine. So the main point I'm trying to get at here is to see how the logic and how Lama will try to lift us up to identify with our goodness. Forget even the pleasure part, but to lift us up. So instead, this is where if we start to see our minds more, we're doing the junior school, controlling the body and speech, then controlling our mind. And we know we've got delusions. I'm like I talk about my roommates. You've got all the crazy roommates. They are there. Until we're highly evolved, they're going to be there, kind of uncontrolled, But we know that they're there. But when you're becoming more self-respectful, when you're becoming more subdued, more controlled, more self-respectful is the best way to put it. Your delusions are there, but you don't have a panic attack every time they rise up. You don't vomit them out the mouth every time. When people ask how you are, we always say the worst things about ourselves. Oh, I'm so angry. I'm so depressed. We always run to the negative roommates. We've got to practice identifying with our good roommates, a practice identifying with our kindness, with our compassion, with our intelligence, with our progress, with our effort. This is literally practical psychology. It's really powerful. This is called positive psychology. And that's exactly the Mahayana path, and most especially the Tantric, in the most down-to-earth way. You've got good qualities. So we all know ourselves, if every time you identify with your anger, it looms large in your head. And if you keep repeating it and repeating it, I'm angry and I come angry and I'm angry, of course you're going to increase it. But if you know the anger's there, but you don't give it so much power, you've got some courage to hear it, but you cultivate the positive thoughts to argue with it, and you present that to the world. That's skillful means. From that point of view, I loved Martin Luther King because he had this extraordinary aspect. Whenever he talked, we were looking at a documentary just now, and people asked that, especially those years before, most appalling questions, say the most appalling things. Like one white racist was asked what he thought about this. He said, well, even if he is human, hearing these words about yourself and these idiotic questions, insulting and patronizing, but he always showed a peaceful, kind aspect. And you could see it was effortless. This is unbelievable. meaning he was buying into his positive qualities all the time. I mean, another person who has no patience would think, what else do you expect me to do except get angry? He didn't get angry. That means he was identifying with his positive qualities. And no matter what he was confronted with, always the positive words came out. I mean, that's pretty advanced psychology. Think about it. It's not just weak, oh, he's a nice guy, you know. It's really powerful. That means he, you know, okay, I know apparently he had a few girlfriends, right? Okay, he couldn't resist the girls, all right? He had a bit of attachment. But this powerful aspect he showed was called patience, but it was always optimistic. It was always positive. It was always skillful. That means those were the thoughts that prevailed in his mind. That's what he expressed to others, no matter how bad the outside, which means he has to have subdued his attachment to some degree. He had this powerful ability to literally buy into his positive thoughts. That's pretty powerful. That's like the Bodhisattva path. That's like Tantra. The trouble is when we first start to work on our mind, because the negative thoughts are so prevalent, and then because dramas happen out there, we just are they loom completely large in our mind, and we can't even hear anything else. We don't even think there are positive qualities there, or we think, what do you mean be positive? I'm allowed to be angry. But Martin Luther King always said the most positive words. He was allowed to be as angry as he liked, but he chose not to. And that's why millions of people adored him, you know. He was identifying with his positive qualities, always seeing the best side of it. But he was ruthless in never giving up and continuing to get people to see it in a gentle way. It was so wise, you know, so extraordinary. That really shows a very special mind, if you think about it, you know. Person who's got more anger, more overwhelmed by their misery, they would have made a complete mess in 3 minutes and then beaten somebody up and got killed. But the first step is to be controlled. The first step is to control our body and speech, harness our body and speech, control the servants of the mind, calm them down first, get some discipline. You can see that with him. He had an impeccable disciplined behavior. Okay, he jumped on a few girls. Okay, what to do, you know? Hopefully he was nice to them. But he had disciplined body and disciplined speech. These are very potent qualities. Think about that, because that's what the world sees. If he was uncontrolled, nobody would listen. If you look at these, you know, on the Washington Post, they've got some filming of some of the people in the Capitol, you know, or anybody who's got lots of anger, shouting and yelling, insane, demented, out of control behavior, violent physical and violent verbal, you know, out of control. Completely no discipline. But look at Martin Luther King. Impeccable behavior. Impeccable. This is very, very powerful. Look what it presents to others. That's the Bodhisattva aspect, you know, presenting to the world. That gives people incredible courage. And what it's coming from is his mind. It's not coming out of the blue. It's amazing, you know. And he might have had his own doubts and struggles, but he kept them to himself. That's what you do when you've got more advanced, when you've got more control over your body and mind and your speech. And you really have this aspect. You're going to go out today and you're just my presence. I want to make people happy. I always quote, that's why I always continually quote Grace Kelly. Of course I have to look beautiful. People have to look at me. That's profound. Because you're going to impact upon others. That's the Bodhisattva path, in particular the Tantric. You got to make people joyful. By your presence, you should lift people up. That's why people adore the Dalai Lama. Just by seeing him, you feel happy, you know. Because he's not existing for himself. He doesn't need to. Whatever he does, whatever he says, is only for the sake of who sees him, who hears him, you know. That's why the guru, you got special permission. You're given special permission to your guru to tell you off because they want to see your mind. Mr. Lee told me off. Lama Zopa's told me off. Lama Yeshe's told me off. But I want that. I want to see my mind. I'm grateful. It's the action of the guru, you know, the action of the Buddha, because he only wants the best for me. Just like the guy running over that lady's garden. He only wanted the best for her. You've got to understand that, but you've got to recognize it's a possibility, and that's in the Mahayana teachings. If you don't understand this, all this is just gobbledygook. All this is just superstition, you know. Other questions, people?
Venerable Robina, Wendy has a question.
Wendy, what is it, darling?
I'm super struggling with what you said about Trump, Robina.
I'm sure you are, Wendy.
So hard, because at one point you're saying that we're not supposed to harm other people.
That's
There's
right.
an enormous amount of harm
That's
done.
junior school and high school. That's junior school, Wendy.
But like
Then
I
high school. Now, wait a minute. Stop. Wait.
like I'm saying also that Hitler,
wait,
are you saying also
Wendy,
Hitler,
Wendy,
Hitler,
Wendy.
Buddha? I can't buy that.
I know, I can see that.
I can't go along with
Let
it.
me go one step at a time. I'm trying to explain it to you. You don't have to believe a word I'm telling you. I'm going to show you the logic and you can decide if you like it or not. First junior school, you control your body and speech. You harness your behavior. You behave nicely. Why? Because you're trying to stop yourself from being berserk because you're sick of suffering. Then you get to high school and you unpack and unravel your mind, Wendy, and you discriminate the attachment and the anger and the neuroses and the depression and the anxiety from the love and compassion and wisdom and kindness. And you really begin to harness your mind. You are really under control now, still for your benefit. Now you've subdued yourself to a phenomenal degree. Now, Wendy, you can go to the compassion wing and you start to continue to work on your mind, lessening attachment, lessening anger, lessening jealousy. There's guaranteed you will do that. And you grow more and more compassion and more compassion and more compassion until eventually you've made a paradigm shift and you have bodhicitta. You only think of others. There's no possibility of thinking of yourself any longer. You've got to factor in the possibility of this psychologically, Wendy. I'm not forcing it down your throat. I'm just trying to tell you there's not a possibility. And especially if you're a bodhisattva who's realized emptiness, it is impossible to have attachment. It is impossible to have anger in the mind. It is impossible. They have burned it. It is gone. So you have to accept that as a possibility. If there's not a possibility of anger, a possibility of jealousy, a possibility of attachment, a possibility of having any dualistic sense of a separate me, if that is gone from their mind, gone, Wendy, impossible to be there, then all there is left is unbelievable compassion, unbelievable wisdom. And you see, when you're really a Buddha, you can see 20,000 lifetimes in the future. You can see 20,000 lifetimes in the past. You have the wisdom like you can't imagine, and you will manifest in whatever form will be of benefit to that sentient being to lead them to enlightenment as quickly as possible. You have to accept that as a possibility. If not, then it all doesn't make sense. I accept what you're saying.
It does with like the crazy old, like, but I look at a mind like Trump's, or I look.
Wendy, stop, please. Wendy, stop. Are you clairvoyant? And I mean this a literal question. Clairvoyance means
I am not.
exactly his mind. You can see his past lives. You know exactly where he's coming from. Have you got that wisdom?
I do not.
Then you do not know that he's not a Buddha. That is perfect, total logic, and you cannot. No, Wendy, wait, one step at a time. You can't argue with that. You do not know. So it's a possibility he's a Buddha. Now, I am not saying for 1 second that he is a Buddha. I am not saying that. I'm not saying that. But if you use the logic that I'm describing and the possibilities that the Bodhisattva path and Tantric path talk, then it is, you have to, so if you don't know, the Tibetans have this word, you don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. The stories in the literature are full of this crazy people who do crazy things and look like maniacs, but they're Buddhas, you know. I mean, I know it's insane, Wendy. Look, she's in a complete state of shock. It's wonderful. I completely understand your point. I'm not saying he's the Buddha, but now the real question is, let's just pretend a person who could be a Buddha could act like a maniac. Then the question is, what do I do? You know, what do I do with that? Then you'd still see his politics. You'd agree that they're wrong politics. You don't have to vote for him. You could still think his behavior is outrageous. But part of your mind, and this is too hard for our mind, Wendy. I mean, this is just the Bodhisattva path. I'm not even going to the Tantric path yet. This is too much, and this is Buddhist psychology. What does it think the possibility? That's all. Of course, it's mind-bogglingly absurd initially. It still doesn't mean you have to vote for Mr. Trump. Still think his politics. I remember the Dalai Lama said about what's his name? Bush. What's his name? What's his first name? What's his first name? Bush's first name.
George Bush.
He said, I don't like politics, but he's not a bad guy. He said, okay, maybe he wouldn't say that about Mr. Trump. I've got no idea, but I know it's outrageous what I'm saying, but it's based on the logic of this series of development of realizations. We have to consider the possibility that you can be rid of delusions, and we have to consider the possibility of incredible wisdom in past and future, and we have to consider the possibility that, like a wise mother, you can tell me to go to my room, which looks like punishment, but just multiply that a few million times. That's a possibility. I know it sounds insane, and I use extreme examples, and it's so shocking. Let it sit there for a while. Let it be. It doesn't mean you have to vote. It doesn't mean you go, oh, well, I better vote for Mr. Trump. He's a lovely person. No. I mean, there's a fellow coming along to rape you. You don't go, oh, he could be a Buddha. No. Bloody shoot him in the head if he's going to rape you.
Thank you.
Call the police, but he doesn't mind. That bodhisattva who ran.
I get where you're going. It's an
I know. So just have to think about this possibility. Of course, it's insane. You've got to just lead it to an extreme. I mean, I'm extreme. I always use extreme examples, but there's got to be some based in logic. If it's not logic, it's a load of junk, Wendy.
Okay.
Thank you, darling. I love it. She had a panic attack because she's like this, you know. Wonderful. I love it. What else, you people? I'm running out of voice. I shout so much. What's going on? What else? But calm down, relax. It's much better just to think of the kind ones. That's why Dalai Lama, luckily we've got a kind person. Luckily we have this nice guy who looks so pure and so ethical. The world needs that, Wendy. So we'd be so grateful we've got him as an example. Do you understand my point? Yeah. What a relief. Go on, people. What else? Who else? Something? Huh? Nothing? Yes, Zach. Talk to me.
Thank you, Venerable Robina, for your teaching. My question is, often Tantra and things of these practices, they come with a warning label and my question is this rooted in the attempting to do a practice where my foundation is not strong, like he's talking the junior in the high school, that I would miss the point completely and do more harm to myself and others?
Exactly. It's like that, but often we hear it as kind of like heavy and superstitious and you're going to be punished for 42 eons and this kind of thing. And of course it is. It's like, yeah, of course it is. It's like, of course it is. Of course it is. You know, of course it's simply, you know, like if you go to postgraduate physics and you haven't quite done high school, you need a warning label, honey. You won't understand it. It's very obvious. But we're so not used to thinking of religion like that. But it's like that. There are different levels of practices that you need qualifications beforehand, which is pretty reasonable. And it's just true. But this is what I loved about Lama Yeshe and what I'm trying to do here. I mean, excuse me, I'm not anything like Lama Yeshe, but I'm his daughter. Lama had this amazing way of cutting through all the intense. He didn't teach in a highly technical way. He never did. He does really, but he teaches in the simplest way to try to convey to us modern people the psychology of Tantra, this approach, you know, which when we hear it, it makes such sense. And this is, in other words, it's a way of bringing Tantra down to earth as a psychological approach to life, enhancing more the joy, the happiness, the goodness, the virtue, you know, and then identifying with that we can all get, you know, but that's the point, even to able to do that. I mean, I know when I first heard Lama talk this way, I loved it, but I didn't know how to do it because I was so overwhelmed by my misery. But at least I heard it. And you aim for that, you know. So of course, the only person who can use attachment and use anger, the only person who can look like they're angry but really not be angry is a person who's given up anger. It's like play acting anger, like the wise mother, you know. We all know that one. And that's pretty profound. And that's why they talk about Tantra using all the delusions, you know. It just means you can act in a way. It's an acting in a way that's beneficial for others, depending on the method. Some are peaceful methods, some are really heavy methods, some are more kind of transforming attachment methods where you're sort of more friendly and sweet to somebody. It's because bodhisattvas and Buddhas don't need bodies. I mean, Buddhas don't need bodies. So when they take a body, they've got to act in a certain way that's most beneficial to that person. And they will be the most beneficial every time. And if it needs a strong word, they'll give it. They need a peaceful word, they'll give it. Whatever method works, you know. We have to understand the logic of how that's possible. Like I said to Wendy, you've got to recognize the possibility that you can have a mind that doesn't have delusions. That's not in the Western psychology at all. And it's only in that framework that you can be outrageous and do things that look shocking. But yes, certainly, I mean, with Tantra, I remember Lama Zopa. Okay, on the one hand with Tantra, in this system, if you've got the three principal aspects of the path, you've really got some appreciation for renunciation, you've got appreciation for emptiness and bodhicitta, then that qualifies you to actually go and take an empowerment. And then as Lama Zopa says, don't even pretend that you're going to get realizations in this life, but just know you've got those tools, this is my words, under your belt. You've got them in the toolkit. And we need all of those. We need all the sets of vows. We need lay vows. We need the pratimoksha. We need bodhisattva vows. We need tantric vows as tools to enable us to get enlightened. So the more we can take these every time with confidence, with no expectation of getting high realizations, but you've got them in your mind stream, then next life you'll do it again, next life you'll do it again, so that we need these seeds in our mind. Realizations will come one day, don't hold your breath. So you need the tools, you need the seeds in your mind, you need to nourish them. This is a very powerful level of practice. Does that make sense, Zach? Or not?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. The long-term goal is the one, you know. Yeah. And even just by, again, okay, yeah, that's good. So yes, exactly your point. What else then? Margaret has a point. What's Margaret's point?
Venerable Robina, there's a question from Margaret.
Yes.
It is a frequent side effect. However, you have to be careful because it is possible that a dog's digestion can get messed up with what happened to Joey.
Mary,
I'm
I can't
still-
understand what you're saying. You keep cutting out, darling. You need a better connection.
Excuse
Okay.
me, that's not correct. I mean, that should not have gone there. I was sending a note to someone else. I apologize.
Margaret, okay, so we didn't hear it anyway, darling, so it's okay. Good, all right. Are there any other questions from people? Any other
I have-
questions? Yes,
Venerable-
Christine. Go talk.
Thank you. Could you speak a little bit more about the 4 levels of Tantra that you
Well,
mentioned?
yeah, I know. I hardly ever talk about it. Let's see what John has to say. He's got a chapter here, I think. Let's see what John's notes are the best ones for you people to study. He's so serious and correct and accurate. He's great. 4 classes. Here we go. The 4 classes of Tantra, page 92. Let's see what John says. I never talk about this. There are 4 levels of Tantra. In other words, 4 levels at which you can utilize the capability of utilizing different things. So the 4 classes of Tantra. So one of the first headings on page 92, Tantra uses the energy of desire to uproot delusion. So this is the whole approach of Tantra, is utilizing the poison as for the path. So basically the 4 levels of Tantra, they talk about the first level, which is called Kriya Tantra. I don't know. There's just 4 levels of ability to utilize the delusions. So they would talk about, for example, using the analogy of the cake. The first level of utilizing desire is by you utilize the joy that's coming from just looking at it. The next one is utilizing the joy that comes from touching it and eating it. And then the third one is utilizing the joy of eating it. There's different levels of contact with the object of attachment that a person at the different stages is capable of utilizing. That's the essence of it, darling. And the highest one is called highest yoga tantra. That's the best I can tell you. That's a Lama Yeshe answer, okay?
Okay.
Christina?
Yep.
Read John's notes, baby.
Yep, I'm on the page. Yep.
Good,
thanks.
darling, fantastic.
Okay.
He goes into really clear detail. He's wonderful. Different names. Okay, go on. So any other questions, people? Any other questions? No?
Venerable Robina, looks like Trish has a question.
Darling, talk to me, Trish. Talk to me, sweetheart.
Why is happiness so scary?
Speak a bit louder, darling.
Why is happiness so scary?
Good point, Trish. It's a really fascinating point. So let's just analyze again what happiness means. Let's really get it down to the bare bones. In the Buddhist way the mind is constructed, we have the neurotic, I-based, fear-based that tend to overwhelm us, tend to be looming large in our head. Worries, fears, anxiety, not sure, a bit worried what people think, a bit depressed, a bit angry. We know these so intimately and they're running like crazy, uncontrolled thoughts. So in other words, I've never met, forget even happiness yet, Trish, I'll come to that, but even positive thoughts. Think of this. What is a positive thought? It means, when you're helping people and you're full of compassion and love and kindness, and a person talks to you and they tell you something and you delight for them, that's a positive thought. Love is a positive thought. May you be happy. You see people happy, you delight in them instead of feeling jealous. You hear a noise, you see these kids all making a screaming noise, and instead of being angry, you go, oh, look at those kids, they're just being kids, and you smile. So this is virtue, virtuous states of mind. Now already, Trish, even before we go further, we can see immediately that when negative states of mind there, it is the opposite to feeling happy. It's actually really unpleasant feelings. Would you agree with that? Wouldn't you? You'd agree with that? When you're angry, you've got very unpleasant feelings, which is called suffering. When you're jealous, you've got unpleasant feelings. When you're angry, you've got unpleasant feelings. When you've got low self-esteem, you've got unpleasant feelings. So it's really obvious that unpleasant feelings walk hand in hand with negative states of mind. And pleasant feelings walk hand in hand with love, compassion, kindness. So we all know ourselves. We know some people who are just really not happy, meaning like hysterically happy. I don't mean like happy because they get toast and get boyfriends all the time. That's like attachment happiness. Not that kind of happy, but kind of like not even, and then you say virtuous happiness, it sounds like being a saint and it sounds kind of boring, but it's really logical. So if we so then the other kind of happiness is when you consciously enjoy the cake. instead of feeling guilty or shoving it in and then missing it. That's another kind of conscious action of attempting, when you do get the sense object, and this is coming more from the tantric approach, when you engage in the cake and when you engage, and I'm even now not trying to talk about sex and be too embarrassing, but if you've got a partner and you're feeling a bit kind of want to go to sleep, but you're full of love for your partner, and you decide you're going to give them, have love and happiness with them, do what you do as a partner out of kindness to the person, you'll get enormous pleasure from that. But if we only think that pleasure comes when I get what my attachment wants, it's just a honey-covered razor blade, and it only brings more misery. So first of all, again, happy feelings are coming naturally with love and compassion and kindness, right there. And then the tantric approach is consciously engaging in the cake, not driven by the attachment and the greed, but consciously then delighting in the natural pleasure that comes when cake meets tongue. And that needs awareness and consciousness. Do you understand? Or when you have you join up with your boyfriend, or you do something and you have sensual pleasure, you engage in that. And we can all see this in ordinary daily life. We can practice act instead of feeling guilty or tense or restricted or unhappy. You can actively enjoy when the mind is open. And that's the point about when the mind is full of love, when the mind is open, when your mind is devoted, you're already happy. And then you add extra happiness to it when you have the contact with the boyfriend, or when you have the contact with the cake, or when you go to see the movie, or when you listen to the music. It can lift you up. But if your mind is closed and you're cynical, you can't get any pleasure at all. So there's different levels at which we can experience a happy mind, and pleasure is another word for happy mind. There's degrees of it, but it's becoming conscious. It's becoming conscious, Do you understand?
I agree with everything you're saying, and I have experienced that kind of true, profound happiness where I've eaten the cake, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it on every level.
That's right.
I understand that that's my right to have that kind of happiness.
That's right.
But how do you sustain that? I mean, it happens
by lessening attachment, by lessening anger, by lessening depression, by lessening jealousy, by controlling our body, by controlling our speech, and having discipline and doing lots of practice. That's the literal answer. It's a progressive, it's not hit and miss. Pleasure and happiness will be the natural result as and when we lessen our delusions. That's the logic, Trish. So that's where the practice is. In the beginning, the practice is on harnessing the body, harnessing the speech, harnessing the mind. That's where the tough work is. And the result of that is then more virtue and more stability, and therefore more joy. It comes slowly. It's not hit and miss, darling. Do you understand what I'm saying, Trish?
Thank you. Yeah.
That's the logic in Buddhist psychology. Yeah. So we practice slowly. We actively try to activate the kindness and the love and the compassion. It's not easy sometimes. And then eventually, like all things, we say practice makes perfect, but Tibetans have a lovely way of saying it. They say nothing gets more difficult with practice. Very consoling, I think, isn't it? So it's not hit and miss, Trish. And that's, I think, what we think in the West. Happiness is a bit hit and miss, but it's logical. As and when you control your body, speech, and mind, which is hard work. That's the discipline part. The result, initially it's hard work. It doesn't feel like happiness, but eventually you stabilize your body, speech, and mind, and then more joy just comes naturally. And then you can even actively experience it and actively grow it because you're in control of your body, speech, and mind. Do you understand, darling? Thank you. That's a really good point. Thanks, Trish. What else, people? Why don't we just do a little meditation to finish? Same old thing. I mean, I just do really simple versions of these meditations. I don't do complicated ones. Why don't we just do, I don't know, just Chen raising again. Chen raising or Tara. Same thing every time, really. I just do the same thing every time. But it's just to show, it's just to sort of, it's just to sort of, Chen raising and Tara are very typical, or Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha himself is a very common one. Manjushri we could do, but they're all the same, really. Just the different meanings of each one, that's all. My voice is running out. Why don't we just do Tara? Simple Tara example. This is, I do it every time the same, so I don't mean to bore you, but just get the principle, get the meaning of the point of it, So be very natural, just visualize in front. Imagine in front. If you're familiar with Tara, she's the bodhisattva aspect, always looking gorgeous in these gorgeous looking clothes, you see in the pictures and the statues. But the real point is the meaning. What is this meaning of Tara? Which is the qualities of all the Buddhas: totally blissful, totally compassionate, totally wise, totally powerful, totally clear. She's a mirror image of our own potential, you know, but she's got the particular aspect is courage, confidence, optimism, cut through the obstacles, action energy, make things happen. We all need that badly. Often in Tibetan Buddhism, this in iconography, that's often represented as female, kind of quick, cut through the nonsense, no rubbish, you know. We all need this badly. We need courage. We need optimism. We need to be brave. We need to cut through the obstacles. We need to know it's possible that we can do it, you know. That's what Tara represents. So just imagine, as much as you know this vision, imagine the visualization, it's representing that energy. And I want to become like that. She's showing me how I can become, you know. So just imagine, very simply, just imagine from her heart, she sends radiant beams of light, okay? Just imagine light. Doesn't matter what color, just think of it as white light from her heart that enters into your heart and fills you completely, just fills you completely, you know. And also we have a spiritual teacher, you think that's Tara, oneness with Tara. Your teacher's mind is Tara. And this full of love and compassion for us and wanting us only to be happy. So she sends us some raising beams of light from her heart that enter into our heart and fill us completely. So imagine, first of all, it purifies completely all the suffering of our bodies, makes our body radiant and clear, purifies all the nonsense from the past, which we've used our bodies to harm others, completely purifies all the nonsense of our speech. Just think like this, really simple. All the rubbish that pours out of our mouths, the uncontrolled speech, the confused speech, the vague speech, the speech we didn't mean to say that we said, not knowing what to say. But just imagine, full of this blissful light, purifies all the nonsense of our speech, all the harm we've done with our speech, and fills us with this marvelous potential to say and say whatever's necessary, kind, compassionate, wise words, and whoever hears them, they're benefited. Can you imagine this? Making people happy. So imagine making people happy with our body. Whoever sees us is made happy. Making people happy with our speech. Whoever hears us is made happy. Think of this, imagine this, how marvelous. And then our mind. Imagine all the nonsense, the attachment, the fears, the limitations. I can't do it, not possible, all gone, washed away by this radiant white nectar filling us. Imagine. So amazing. Or light, this powerful white light. Imagine this. Our body, speech, and mind completely purified by this blissful white light, our mind full of wisdom, full of compassion, full of love, full of kindness. These are our natural potential. These are our natural qualities. These are who we really are. Imagine this, how amazing. Then imagine Tara comes to sit above our heads. And just imagine she dissolves into green light and dissolves through our crown. And imagine that the energy of our Lama's body, speech, and mind and Tara's body, speech, and mind merges with our body, speech, and mind. This is who I am. This is really who I am. I'm just training myself, imagining this is possible. This is who I am. Imagine this. And just for about a minute, just no thoughts, just visualize yourself as vast as space, completely full of Buddha nature, completely full of Tara nature, completely full of clear mind, wise mind, compassionate mind. Delusion's gone. Delusion's gone. They're not at the core of our being, so they're gone. Imagine this: joy, clarity, wisdom, space, as big as the universe. For about a minute. This is who I really am. Imagine this. Bringing the future result into the present. Blissful, clear, kind, open, compassionate, courageous. This is my true nature. So now imagine, we pretend we've become Buddha. Now we've imagined we've become Buddha. What's our job? It's to benefit sentient beings. What else? So imagine right in front of us, all the mean people. We don't like Mr. Trump, stick him right there. All the maniacs, all the wackos, all the ex-husbands, the mean people right in front of us, eyeball to eyeball. Then to the left, our beloveds. If we have any beloveds at all, put them right there and to the left in front of us, just in front of us. Your beloveds, the objects of your attachment. The ones in the middle are the objects of your aversion. And then to the right and everywhere else, 99.999% of the universe, which are the strangers. So who are the friends? By definition, those who do what my attachment want. Who are the enemies? By definition, those who do what my attachment doesn't want. And who are the strangers? Which is most of the universe. They do neither. They neither harm nor help. How do we feel about the friends? We adore them. How do we feel about the enemies? We can't stand them. How do we feel about the strangers? We couldn't care less. So put the strangers in the whole universe, in front of you, behind you, in front, behind, below, to the sides, the whole universe full of all the strangers. These trillions of beings, all in the form of humans, which is the form they can get enlightened in. Just imagine this. And think they all want to be happy, just like me. They all don't want to suffer, just like me. That's one thing we all share, driven by the wish to be happy, driven by the wish not to suffer. Well, you know what? They've all got the potential, just like me. And my job now, I'm the Buddha, is no matter how long it takes, my job is to help each one of them develop that potential. And I will use whatever methods according to my skill, my wisdom, my clarity, my kindness to be of benefit to every single one as much as I can. That's my job. So imagine now from our hearts, imagine trillions of green taras go out and enter into the hearts of all the enemies, all the friends, and all the strangers. This time taking away all their suffering, giving them everything they need, and turning them into their Tara, which is their true nature as well. And visualizing this just for a minute or two as we say the mantra. Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Svaha. 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 Imagine they've all become Buddha. It's their nature. They all possess Buddha nature. It's their nature. It's not possible not to possess this potential. That's why the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas have such endless, never giving up, because it's possible. It's possible. It's logical. So now imagine the all Tara. Where's Tara gone? What do we do? She's dissolved into us. I forget. No, she's in us now. That's right. Yes, so Tara's gone. So now imagine all these transformed Taras, all from all directions, dissolve into green light and all absorb into us, enhancing 1 billion times our own amazing Tara nature. Imagine this. Want this. And now we finish. I know it's a bit early. It's okay. With the 4 immeasurable thoughts, his outrageous, amazing bodhisattva attitude. Just think, aspirations, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, hatred, and ignorance. May they abide so. And this is the attitude of the bodhisattva, the brave attitude of the bodhisattva. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness, or Lama Zopa says it's not ordinary happiness, but like happiness of enlightenment. May they have them. And its causes, may they have them. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. to give me the courage. This is the courage of Tara and the courage of the Buddhas. Never give up. Optimism, which is joyful mind, joyful effort. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberations, excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Lama Tara, bless me to be able to do this. So remember, and also what should give us such confidence when we understand karma, that every thought we have leaves a seed, programs us. So just having these positive thoughts, this is something that should blow our minds. Just having positive thoughts is like atomic bombs on the negative ones and lifts your mind and grows that potential. It's like you're practicing. It doesn't go astray. We think thoughts don't matter. When we understand every thought does matter, then it's already a profound level of practice. That's why when if you're miserable, if you're depressed, you're angry, you can't make it go away, so don't try to fight it. Let them be there, these screaming roommates, but you put mantra on top. Just say Tara mantra, say Chen raising mantra. That's how you use Tantra. You just put a mantra on top. Don't think you got to walk around looking all holy to say a mantra. No, when you're feeling the most miserable is when you say a mantra. You can't make the thoughts go away. They're too strong. But don't be nervous, don't buy into them, and just stick a mantra on top. Let them be there, it doesn't matter. Just Om Tade Tade, Om Mani Padme Hum, whatever, and they put atomic bombs under them, you know. So many tools we could use. And try to have a happy mind. That means not just happy by having cakes and happy by having boyfriends, but positive thoughts. And by thinking, I'm doing a good job. This is Tantra. I'm doing well. I'm doing amazingly. I'm really Tara in my true nature. I want to act like Tara. I want to be like Tara. You fake it till you make it. It's like acting a role. You write a script and you act it. That's pretty profound, you know. That's how you become a Buddha. That's the resultant path. That's Tantra. Okay, that'll do, people. Good night, everybody. Even if there's 1% that's useful, please use it. If not, I'm so sorry. But if there's more than 1%, that's even greater.